as you drive from Guadalajara, that you land in Guadalajara and you go to Tequila, and you go and you see how the agaves plant, and the sightseeing. I'm sorry that you're not going to believe it. I cry every time I drive it. And every time I'm like so thankful for the opportunity to be able to go back, to connect, to see the agave right there, the way it is, the beauty. You see the blue because it is blue.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Decoding Cocktails Podcast. I'm your host, Chris LeBeau. At the ripe age of 38, I left my former career behind and joined the hospitality industry. Since then, I've been on a rapid journey of learning, meeting all sorts of great people, and this podcast is my chance to bring you along with me, whether I'm interviewing somebody that works in the industry, another enthusiast, or occasionally stepping back to share what I'm working on or my thoughts. I'm so glad you're here, and so with that aside, let's get into today's episode. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of Decoding Cocktails. I am Chris LeBeau. Before we get into today's episode, just a quick note. Former podcast guest, Marshall Minaya of Valerie and Madame George in New York City. On February 6th, Marshall and I are going to be hosting a free virtual class on aromatized wines, aka Vermouth and Quinquina, which one of the brands you might know in that is Lillet Blanc. And we'll probably get into sherry a little bit too. What are these things? How do you use them? When and when are they not interchangeable? There will be a link to register for that in the show notes. And certainly reach out if you have any questions. My guest today is MariCarmen Ortiz-Conway. She is from Mexico City, but now calls St. Louis home. And MariCarmen is a certified tequila expert and is an official catadora, which means taster. MariCarmen and I were introduced, and as you will hear very shortly, the level of passion and enthusiasm that just comes off of this woman, especially regards to her home country, and in particular the spirits from her home country, is just overwhelming in the best way possible. There will be links on places you can find her. One thing that you'll hear her talk about is she does also at times make tours available into Mexico if you're ever interested in heading down there. So today we are going to primarily talk about tequila. And one of the things I wanted to put in a little side note, she also has a recipe out there I found for Mexican hot chocolate. And so that will also be linked to in the show notes. But a couple of things, and you'll see this on her website as well. At one point when she was talking with a very renowned tequila distiller, I think she kind of said to him in passing, hey, what are some of your favorites? And he said, my favorite tequila is acompañado, which means, to translate literally, means accompanied. And accompanied with what? With people. And, a theme we come back to over and over again on this show is this idea that we don't make a drink, we make it for someone. Sharing tequila with someone is what really matters. And so something to keep in mind as you listen to this and pull out your tequila, your mezcal, or go out and buy some. Who are you going to share that with? It's always a great thing to be thinking about. One of the things we're going to talk about early in the episode is I asked, this was a couple of months ago, we talked, and MariCarmen was getting ready to head down to Mexico for Dia de los Muertos. And so I wanted to know a little bit about what it was, but she said something that I feel like was valuable, which is the idea that we have holidays to celebrate all sorts of things, and we do have a Memorial Day to celebrate fallen soldiers. But around the holidays is when at times we tend to remember, the loved ones, the friends that we have lost. But as she said, we don't actually have a day for that here in this country. And she talked about the importance of setting that time aside for them. So I feel like that was a very nice, enjoyable part of the conversation. In addition, one of the things, especially as we watch the ascent of tequila right now, the idea that, so Mexico has what's called the CRT, don't ask me what the full name of it is right now, but that is the regulatory commission that oversees tequila. And she'll get into that, and we'll talk about things like the app Tequila Matchmaker, which there'll be a link to as well in the show notes. But the idea that the level of rigor behind testing in Mexico is so robust that at times even the good old folks in the Champagne region of France will send stuff to the CRT lab in Mexico because their tools are so advanced, which I thought was a pretty fun thing and certainly a point of pride. Finally, one thing we didn't get into, and I will link out to this a little bit as well, but I asked MariCarmen at one point about the various ways you can cook tequila. Mezcal is now very famously known for being cooked underground. You can cook tequila in some instances in kind of an underground oven or in a above ground oven. A lot of times something called an autoclave is used, which is kind of like a pressure cooker. And she talked around this, and I'm sure that there are exceptions, but one of the things she did, so what I really wanted to talk about was this idea of autoclave, this kind of this pressure cooker versus what's called the diffuser. And some of the controversial issues right now around diffusers are that they can be used to permit the harvest of very immature and young agave plants, which is not helping to build up a robust system, overtaxing nature as well. At times also chemicals are used in them. And so, just as we again watch the rise of tequila, there are still things out there that that we need to know more about with respect to this spirit that's just doing incredible things right now in the country. But either way, this is a wonderful interview. MariCarmen is a wonderful soul, and I hope you will check out the links to find her. And that's what I've got. Enjoy this episode. So MariCarmen, buenos dias and gracias for taking some time to talk today.
Hola, Chris. Gracias. Buenos dias. Also, I am very happy and thankful for your patience working with me with, rearranging our schedules and making it possible for me to be able to talk about tequila, Mexico, and my passion that is take this to everybody because it's in our blood, right? So
it's a super fun time to watch agave spirits because for many of us, our older memories of tequila, if we have any of mezcal, are it's a late night party drink. It's terrible margaritas, and to see the ascent, the curiosity of how these things are grown, brought to the market. With that, of course, comes other things to talk about in terms of all kinds of international investment and things that are complicated. But something that felt topical, just to kind of start us off somewhere. I know you are getting ready to head down to Mexico for Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that is like. Tell us a little bit about the holiday, the ritual. Just tell us a little bit about what that's like.
I love this day, right? Dia de los Muertos, I always thought, we have day of, Mother's Day. We have Father's Day. We have Veterans Day. We have, a day of, Memorial Day, Labor Day. And we never have, here a Day of the Dead. And what we do is we remember those that have been in our lives. We honor them and we open the doors because it is believed that they come back to see us, So the altars, we, make them in a way that we put things that they loved when they were alive and their favorite foods. And it's a way of just always remembering them, honoring them, and hoping that they're around watching us. And it's just a day that we honor them. So it's celebrated in different ways. Last year I was very happy and honored to be in Oaxaca, which is, I think, the best place to be in Day of the Dead. It's absolutely amazing. And I took moonshiners to Mexico. And if anybody wants to watch that episode on mezcal, and we do have a little bit of, clips of Day of the Dead celebration in Mexico with Tim Smith, and we were recording there the Day of the Dead last year, and it was amazing. In Oaxaca, they do not work those days. Nobody. They just celebrate and honor their family members, their loved ones in every way. So they make food, they cook for everybody, they invite everybody, and it's just party, just celebrating and honoring. They make beautiful altars, and it is a satire, if you want to, say it that way. Mexicans, we do a little bit of a satire, of the dead. We have the Catrina, which is a, personaje that's absolutely amazing. That's the kind of like the skeleton looking, and the Catrina, and it's a beautiful celebration throughout Mexico. That I love to celebrate like that. That united with tequila and mezcal, it's even better, and Mexico, right? Because it is all a synonym. Fiesta, family, values, togetherness, celebration, mariachi, music, song, it all ties together in these celebrations. Name it a birthday, the Day of the Dead, whatever. It's always an excuse to have tequila in your table, mezcal in your table, and just take advantage of knowing. And then while we're talking, I would love to take you from that thing that you just said, that in your olden days you had the opportunity just to, everybody has those memories, right, of a bad night with tequila, and pull you away from that.
Of course. Because
today we have tequila made in amazing ways that we can really understand that. Really, I teach how to kiss the tequila, and that's understanding the aromas that we have, the different processes, the different ways, not to come and do a shot, quick shot, because we need to understand that before you do that shot, the process of you holding a tequila blanco in your hand, it's been at least 7 to 10 years.
Right.
So when we think about that, and when we think this is like no other drink in the world, because wine is beautiful, but wine, it's the grapes, the season. You harvest the grapes, you take care of the grapes,
right?
They die, and then everything happens in the bottle for years, right? But this happens in the ground. You plant the agave, and you take care of the agave for 7, to 10 years,
right,
to come to the sweetness that you need. That plus the aging process is to have a tequila blanco in your hand is at least 7 years of work of every day looking at the plant, taking care of the plant, making sure the plant is growing the way it has to grow, checking the sweetness, the weather, the different areas that we can talk about, So you cannot just come and do a shot,
right,
now.
Right.
It's understanding, and, we'll get there.
Yeah, and I mean, culturally, I think I was talking with a gentleman recently, and he said, like so many cultures are best represented or symbolized in a way at times through some of this history. And right before we started, recording, you talked about, and I think it's an interesting symbolism for the Day of the Dead. You said, this tequila maker you spoke with, his favorite tequila drink was acompañado, which means, with someone, right?
Yes,
And so often I like to think, let's get a drink is just code for I miss you. Let's get together.
Absolutely.
And of course, on Day of the Dead, we're thinking about some of the people hopefully we have some of the most cherished memories with.
Yes.
And it's sad that they're not here, but we get to honor those.
Celebrate their lives.
Yes.
How beautiful is that? I love this day because it is a celebration of their life.
Right.
If not, then you forget.
Right.
When do we honor them, or when do we think of them? It's all the time, right?
Right.
Because we anybody that has a loved one, is not that you just think about this day, right? Because we miss them every single day.
Yes.
But this is a party for them.
Yes.
It is a party that we do for them, not only because we think of them every single day, but this day is a fiesta, celebration, honoring, cooking for them, thinking of them, bringing them back to say salud. We love you today, and we're happy celebrating your life. You know, so that's basically what we do on the Day of the Dead.
So to this spirit and plant that has brought us together today, in terms of how deeply it's interwoven into Mexican culture. So when we're talking about the agave plant, starting at the beginning with it, we know it for tequila, but for many of us here in the U.S., we wouldn't know many of the different other ways that it's used as a plant. Mm-hmm. So do you mind talking to us about some of the other uses? And then we'll, of course, get into what happens as we bring this thing into maturation and turn it into a tasty spirit.
Yes. So agave is used in different ways. There's agave syrup. Agave has inulina, which is, if you want to go into the scientific way, it's not as sweet as other honey, so it helps you with your blood sugars. Inulina is great, but it's used for that, in your agave syrup to sweeten things that is better. But also there's paper that comes from agave fibers, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful paper. People are using it more because of the planet, and everything that that we're trying to keep it clean. Doing straws for agave, from agave. There are lamps that are made from the fibers that are left over. There are undermats, that you can make too. So there's several things that you can make with with the fibers of the agave and with the syrup itself. That they are producing many things right now. Other uses for sure of the agave plant.
It makes me think about, and hopefully it's a okay analogy, that sometimes when we talk about the way that Native Americans used the buffalo in so many things, and so, looking at this plant solely for, tequila or the spirit is the wrong way. And the idea that it can have these multifaceted uses obviously is what interweaves it so deeply into the culture at that point.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's interesting, and there's companies that are taking advantage of all this.
Sure.
The growth is just immense, as you know.
Yeah.
So it is a tremendous growth for the spirit, for the love for Mexico, for the culture, and for the things that come out of this plant as well.
Mm-hmm. So in 1974. The government of Mexico did something that, I think the easiest example is always champagne. I think people get it. The government of Mexico said, okay, when you are producing tequila, it needs to come from these particular regions. It needs to call on these plants in order to be it. So tell us a little bit about the regions where tequila can come from. And, we'll weave our way there, but tell us a little bit about how it's grown and how we get to actually having a spirit in a bottle right there.
Yes. So this is really interesting, and I love to talk about the denomination of origin, because it's really important for us that Mexico is the only country where tequila can be made. And it started more for the same tequileros, more than the government. It was that same tequileros trying to come up with a way of protecting tequila, and definitely one of the main pushers, I don't know how to say in English, pushers or promoters, was Don Jaime Orendain Hernandez, that had a lot to do with this law, getting it started, and then other, tequileros as well. And then we have the denomination of origin. That's the first denomination of origin that Mexico has. We currently have 17 denomination of origin. But the first one that we got was in 1974, and it's tequila. Tequila can be made in 5 states. Jalisco, which is the main producer. It's like talking about bourbon. In the United States, we have the denomination of origin of bourbon. Nobody else in the world can make bourbon, call it bourbon, but us.
Right.
But the best bourbon comes from where?
Kentucky.
So the same thing happens with tequila. We have tequila coming from Jalisco, which is the largest, most known, wealthier in soil, in land, and that's where it comes. And we'll talk about the regions, of it. But Jalisco is a state that the whole state can be considered to make tequila. Okay, and then we have Michoacán, Zacatecas, Tamaulipas, and Guanajuato, and Jalisco, 5 states. And it's not the whole state. It's only certain municipalities in those states that touches Jalisco that tequila can be made. And, but that's the denomination of origin that is so important because nobody can call it tequila.
Right. I don't know if you know this, so I'm curious. I don't know how much of this is lobbying versus the land isn't hospitable in the right way, but in terms of for some of the states where it's not the entire state, is that just because they don't have an interest in growing agave, or is it because they were pushed out? Do you know why? And if you don't, it's not a problem. I'm just curious.
No, that's okay. Look, this is very controversial. So your listeners, that's just my opinion, okay? I think it has to do with climate, which is important, okay? And that the agave doesn't grow in the whole state. And when they did it, they have to make sure that the conditions for blue agave are the right ones in order to be made tequila. And, Tamaulipas, for example, is just very, very little because it's very dry. It's not in the same, if you see geographically, and there's only few, but there's good agave, and it has different notes because of the terroir, same. So it cannot be the whole state because, it just doesn't produce what tequila and what blue agave needs to be, having the sugars, having the sweetness that is required, to be tequila.
Yeah, and much like the same way, there are parts of California that grow lots of wine, and other parts that don't because it's less hospitable to the grape itself, or you have to grow a different type of grape. And when we're talking about tequila, we're talking about this singular plant, the Blue Weber.
Yes, right, absolutely, absolutely. And there's it's very specific. The municipalities that we have, I don't have the information right now, but it's very.
We can link out to that.
We'll link that for sure. And I have exactly how many municipalities of each state there is and where they are. So that would be an interesting thing for listeners that you want to know exactly where. Michoacán has some, most of, I think of the other states. Nayarit, of course, but it's certain municipalities, and it's good to do and to look through other states as well.
So now I kind of want to talk about it, and I don't know, as people become more and more connoisseurs or curious about tequila, I'd be interested to talk about them, how we think about it on a state by state. But one of the things we had agreed we wanted to review is because these plants, 7 to 10 years, before you quickly down that shot, everybody, think about the history and the story and the work behind that, but also not just how long it took to grow it, but where it was grown. So when tequila is grown on a hillside, as opposed to when it's grown in a valley, we can get a very different flavor at times.
So the most, I'm going to speak about Jalisco, because it's the most known, okay? And the majority of the tequilas come from Jalisco. Jalisco is divided in regions. We have the highlands and we have valles, okay? And valles, people say lowlands, and I do not like, because it's not, the altitude is also, high. I think the valles, it's 3,700 feet, above sea level. So that's not low.
Got it.
And so just the highlands, it's a little higher for sure, and that gives us, because of the climate, because of the weather, because of the altitude, different notes, different sugars. It just matures different. It's cooler, has cooler weather, and it matures faster or slower in depending on the area. So the highlands give us has more copper, minerals. So therefore they say it has a sweeter tequila, fruitier, and compared to the valley, we have more earthy, different minerals. But remember, there's a volcano in tequila. So the valley region is all volcanic area. And the water that they use to make tequila comes, from the volcanic area. So it's rich in, in different minerals that give us a spicy herbal notes, and that makes this region of the valley very rich, to make tequilas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so in terms of when we think about tequila beginning to scale up in its, the demand for tequila is really rising right now. And so there are many traditional ways in which it is still made at times. So we, at the right time when this plant is ready for harvest, we go out and we, pull it out of the ground and break it down. When the tequilero brings this in to begin preparing it, they can begin cooking it and crushing or milling it in various ways. Do you mind talking to us a little bit about the ways in which it can be cooked or and milled, unless there's something else we should cover first?
Yes, first. I would like to make sure that that your listeners also understand how important it is to know that tequila is one of the most regulated beverages, spirits that we have. We have the Consejo Regulador del Tequila, which is the Tequila Regulatory Council, making sure that everything is absolutely by law. Okay, we have a norm 006, which is a norm that dictates all the details of the tequila, where, how, process, everything is dictated there. And I love to talk about this because when we go to Mexico, it's really important that if you go on a tour to find out and to look about tequila and to learn about the process and to learn about the, highlands or valley or what tequilas you like, also stop by the CRT and know, because we have a lab that's over $1 million invested on knowing and making sure that everything is perfect. So when you talk about the denomination of origin and having other states, you have a certain time when you plant your blue agave to register in the CRT. If it's not registered and the CRT doesn't have your registrations for your agave, it cannot be used for tequila. So there's always somebody that's gonna be at the field making sure that what is being grown, what has been planted, what's been taken care of is within the denomination of origin. So not just any plant that you just can come and say, okay,
Sure.
I'm going to plant this, I'm going to use that. No, if it's not within and registered in the CRT, you cannot.
And MariCarmen, I forget the term here, but so I'm thinking of the website Tequila Matchmaker.
Yeah,
But-
I know Grover is the creator, and I love him. He's great. So please download this app. Thank you for this commercial for Grover. I'm happy to. It's a great app, Tequila Match, and really they do a tremendous job, following and making sure that every tequila that is complying with everything is with them.
And so, MariCarmen, somewhere on each bottle, there is I think there's a precursor to a four number.
Yeah, that's called the nom.
Yeah, the nom. That's what I thought. Yeah. And so if you type that in, you can see things like, for example, if we were going to type in Jose Cuervo, just for an example, you would also see other tequilas that might be made at Cuervo's facility too. So it's a way where you can begin to understand, one, you might see like, oh, this is just used for Siete Leguas.
Exactly. Yes. Every nom is like their house, if you want to think it that way. So in every bottle, if you guys look, there's an NOM, and that number gives you the house, the distillery where it's made. And you go into and you can know the distillery, where it is, and then exactly if they do maquilas, if they do other tequilas, it's named what tequilas have been done there, either in the past or currently, or if they don't do it anymore. And many times people that are connoisseurs or that know a little bit more about tequila know, oh, that nom, normally the tequilas are this profile, or no, that nom has this profile. Right. And you can start knowing and getting to know the area better and understanding what profiles and what area is what you like the most. So I like the app because it has also notes and it has the location and everything for that. So it's a great tool. If you're getting into tequila, it's a great tool. Going back to the CRT, they are wonderful in order to keep all these, fixed and really regulated. Champagne, the region of Champagne sometimes sends things to be checked at the CRT.
Really?
So I am super happy and honored that we in Mexico have a top of the top notch, state of the art lab and people and chemistries and everything that really dedicate the time to know these. So when we hear about, oh yeah, somebody, they died because they had tequila. No. We have to make sure that the tequila that is coming from always is sealed, checked, verified, approved. I cannot stress enough the tremendous job that the CRT does, because not only they register the plant, but they follow through. When you're harvesting the agave, you take the agave, then it turns into a pineapple shape agave, and that goes, and somebody from the CRT is there making sure that it's being taken from the denomination of origin place and for the plants that are registered.
Sure.
Then they go to the distillery. They take them down from the distillery. Somebody from the CRT is making sure that they're there and they're being used for that. So they're there all the time. When, the process passes and then you age, and you come to a reposado, añejo, or an extra añejo, in the barrels, there's a seal. And only the CRT can open that seal. If the CRT comes and once, because they're there when you pour the liquid in, then they seal it. Okay. Mm-hmm. When you open it and somebody from the CRT is not there and just broke, you cannot use it for sale.
Wow.
So it's always, super, regulated. They have the seals, and anybody that has been in a aging room in tequila, you see all the barrels with the seals. And I love that because it's a great,
Yep.
peace of mind that we have not, for not to follow that, this happened. No, that cannot happen in tequila. Follow, it's got to be sealed. It's perfect. And it's great. We have the best spirit, out there in every way for the materia prima, because it comes from the agave, and blue agave is marvelous. It's great, full of, the sugars, the contents that it gives us. I think just being blue agave makes it richer, makes it more unique, and makes us take care of what we have in many ways. The blue agave, everybody that have planted and that have land with blue agave are very aware and responsible and careful of maintaining their blue agave. So I think it's richer to have just blue agave because we can divide it, take advantage of everything that it has for us, and then choose the profile that we want in the different, ways that we can talk about.
So, a question, and this is asked in the vein of believing and seeing that tequila is going through this incredible rise, and the quality of spirit is really rising. But whether it was back when I was 21, or even now, if I was to go to the liquor store, I could likely find something that says tequila of questionable quality. Now, the grower, the distiller may be adhering to some basic standards, but in terms of not everything labeled tequila right now is people are going to find as smooth and pleasing on the palate as some products. So are there shortcuts or things that are done at times that are allowed that make some products not as high quality as others? And again, I'm not trying to muddy tequila because it's more just knowing that there are some products on the market out there that would be pretty harsh on the palate.
So that depends on your palate. I don't think that I can talk bad about any tequilas that we have as long as it is regulated, as long as it seals, and as long as it says tequila.
Okay.
We have two different types of tequila. That's very important that we understand. We have tequila and we have 100% tequila. Okay? So tequila can be made of 49% of other sugars, which could be fructose, whatever, caña, from the sugar cane,
mm-hmm,
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they choose, and 51% of the sugars from the blue agave.
Right.
And that's the tequila category.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's good or bad. We have great tequilas that are mixtos, that are tequilas. It all depends on your budget, on your likes. There's great tequilas that are extrañejos, that are tequila, but it's what you like.
Yeah.
The other category is 100% blue agave, that is specifically and exclusively the sugar comes from 100% blue agave.
Got it.
And when you go and you buy your tequila, the label says tequila 100% blue agave, or tequila, agave azul. And that's the difference in between both categories, right? Which is important to know. From there, we have blanco, reposado, añejo, and extra añejo. And then the gold that, it's not so big right now. But that's the category. Blanco comes straight from this process that we're talking about. Then I go back a little to that process. Like you say, we plant the agave when it's an hijuelo, when it's a baby, okay, and you take care of it, 5, 6, 7 years, but not less than, depending on the area, and depending on the care, and depending on the master distiller, on when they want and what they want, for bricks, grados bricks, which is how they measure the sugar, is when they harvest. And normally they go and they select the agaves and they say this one. So it's very preference, their own preference. There's master distillers that choose to cut their hima longer, and they leave, instead of being short to the pineapple and making it very short, they leave it longer, so it changes the profile. So it's really interesting on where the area, how they cut it, how they take the sugar, or how they measure, and what they call to be the sugar that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So every distillery has their own, way of, or recipe starting from the agave. So when we think about this, it takes, like I said, 7 to 10 years, more or less, to get to the sugars that tequila is used, and then from there you harvest, then you take it to the distillery, then it's cut, so it goes in the oven, and then it's cooked. there's different processes also. We can talk about just a brick oven or an autoclave, or, the diffuser, which is another way that's we'll get to that. But these are ways that you cook the agave, okay? And the flavors are different. Then the squeezing of the juice are different processes as well. We have a roller mill, or we have a tajona, or again, the diffuser. And the flavors that it gives you, imagine a tajona, which is a volcanic rock, squeezing around and around, like in the olden days that you see how it's done with a donkey or a horse, right? Around and around, squeezing the agave. The notes that's gonna get are different from the roller mill. That it is you pour the cooked agave in it, and it just cuts it and squeeze the juice, and and then it's rinse with this water. And the flavors that it gives us when we're doing this process are different also. So it affects the profile on the way that the juice is squeezed or obtained from the pineapple, from the agave. And that goes then after to the distillation, to the fermentation, where it turns into alcohol, and that's where magic, happens. I think the whole process is magic to me. For me, it's magic, the whole process. But in the fermentation, also every distillery has its own recipe. So some can be natural, some make their own fermentation, some create the fermentation, some do music, some do classic music. That is a topic that's worth speaking, because we can speak about different tequilas specifically and what they do to get their fermentation where they want it to be. After fermentation, then it goes to the distillation process, and the distillation is where also I think magic happens, because it's where you clear that and you clean it and you bring it to the level of the alcohol that you want. It comes 55 60 degrees, and then you start making it to exactly what what you want. And it's very important to have the distillation process. Normally the first process, it's not called tequila, it's just called ordinario. And then it passes, through, and then they select heads and tails or heart of the distillation. And that's, that all depends also on every distillery, what they choose to do. If they choose to do cut heads and tails and work with a heart, and then redo the heads and tails again, or just work with the heart of the, of the distillation process. So the notes that we're getting in every tequila is going to be different. And that's just a matter of how much you like tequila. Going back to your question now from here, then it's passing it through the bottles, straight from the distillation to the bottles. That's your tequila blanco. Then, cannot be at the most 2 months. So that is straight, as pure as you can get. Then the next one is reposado, which is reposed, if you want to say it, but I like our listeners to learn the word reposado, because when you look and you go to buy your tequila, the label is going to say reposado. So it's important that we know that reposado has minimum 2 months of being aged in American or French oak barrels by law. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's French oak or American oak, but it has to be reposed at least 2 months. They say up to a year, but it also depends on the size of the barrel, but at least 2 months. The next one is añejo, which is at least 1 year in American oak or French oak barrels. And, imagine at least 1 year, the notes that you can get in an añejo. If it's 18 months, it's different notes, definitely of wood, of caramel, chocolate, because a lot of the distilleries age their tequilas in bourbon. Okay, so the notes that come from a barrel that has been previously used, the tequila previously used in bourbon barrels are notes that you get from the barrel.
It's something I like to tell people who are bourbon diehards, it's like, hey, you should try añejo or extra añejo, because a lot of times it's going to be sat in ex-bourbon barrels. And so clearly you're still going to have the earthiness and qualities that you get from a tequila, but as it's leaching out and attaching to that barrel, you are going to get some of those familiar woody notes, if not even minor little bits of bourbon infusion into the
and it's super interesting, this also, because there's some tequilas that are aged in wine barrels, and right now there's some that are aged in beer barrels. So things are changing, and
yes,
the industry is branching out in different things, and it makes it really interesting, and I love this. So one of the things that we know is bourbon by law they have to use new barrels. Okay, they have to use new barrels, and when we know that bourbon is using new barrels, by law they only use it 2 years.
Right.
Now they can age it and then take longer, but those barrels, after they're used, then they're done.
Right.
And so then we use them.
So we have a glut of bourbon barrels because they can only use them one time.
Exactly. Yeah. So we get those notes, and so going back into the añejo, and then comes extra añejo, which is at least 3 years aging.
Mm-hmm.
So we have blanco, no aging, reposado at least 2 months, añejo at least a year, extra añejo at least 3 years. So an extra añejo can go 10 years.
Right.
So it all depends the brand. It all depends, what it is. So as you know tequila, you can choose and read about it. Read what are they aging their product, how long they're aging it, and again, like you say, the taste. I cannot say good or bad, because as long as it's a tequila, there's tequilas for every palate.
Sure.
I know people that love the acidity or the roughness when you take it because they like the rough.
Yeah.
And some that like to put in their mouth and be sweet and smooth.
Yeah.
And it's like reading a book, I always say. Drinking a tequila or understanding a tequila is like reading a book. The same book is not going to be read the same, or we're not going to feel the same, you and I, even though we're reading the same book.
Right.
Your feelings, your imagination, your experience is going to be completely different than my mind and my feelings and my oof, that I can feel in that same book. And the same happens with tequila and our taste buds and our palates and our mood. Sometimes you wake up wanting something, and sometimes you want to be with your, honey and just spend sipping, time, or sometimes your same body, because things we eat doesn't taste the same.
Right.
So it all changes, and that's what's so passionate about tequila, because you can make your notes like I do. I do blind tastings, and I love to note the regions and the flavors and the aromas and the softness and the sweetness and and everything, and then just see what I like, what my palate likes, and how I like to drink my tequila, and with what, because that's another thing that I love to talk about is pairing. What goes well with a blanco? What goes well with a reposado? And it is a passion to really get a good blanco tequila with a good ceviche. And pairing that because of the acidity, the peppery, the notes. And when you do that, you're like, boom, it's like, wow, because you're pairing in your mouth a great tequila, This used to happen with wine. And I starting to be a sommelier, but as you know, it's complicated, all the regions and everything. But it's my passion too. And, all the notes that we have, we do the same thing with tequila. You get a glass and you see it, and you start first with your eyes, and then your nose, and then you taste it. So I teach how to kiss the tequila is the best way of understanding, because you are really kissing the tequila to understand all these, flavors. And when you have a blanco and you get the notes and the smells, when it pairs, and the agave flavors and the agave aromas and what it tastes like, and we have over, like I said, 600 aromas that we have in tequila, and we can pair that with great food and get the nuttiness of the dish or the buttery or the chocolate and the sweetness, and you create a bomb in your mouth, and a whole experience, it's amazing.
Do you, just for the person listening out there, 600 sounds like a lot, but, and I don't know if you know this, so if we're talking about rum or whiskey or whatever, do you have any idea how many flavors are in a different spirit, just as a comparison? If you don't, no worries.
I don't know
okay.
how many,
Okay.
because that's not my expertise. I'm
Sure.
experta in tequila.
Sure.
Okay. But I like whiskey. And also, of course, whiskey has different notes and
Right.
smells. I don't know how many. But if you have a whiskey as well and you like that, process, it's great. If you like a whiskey or a cognac, I invite you to try a añejo or an extra añejo,
Yep.
because it will have the body to compare to a cognac. So cognac drinkers or whiskey drinkers are like just set on their, spirit, but I invite you to try a tequila and compare, because the notes and the process and the density and the body, it's very comparable and very rich in many ways that I think you will be surprised, to start exploring this amazing spirit. So I'm not, I am a tequila expert, but
Just fine. I had a client call me recently, and they wanted to do a bourbon tasting. And so I got to talking with them because, one, we should make everybody happy, but it's also sometimes I think people, they need a little guidance in terms of what they really want. And I was like, if you like aged whiskey, I was like, what would really make this tasting really interesting is we're going to bring in an aged tequila.
That would be so interesting.
We're going to bring in an aged rum.
Yeah.
And this way we're going to offer you some real contrast where you're going to get to see like the similarity of like what does barreling do to something.
Absolutely.
But when we have a different base ingredient, you get to see how that yields differently.
Oh, that's passionate. That's amazing, because I have been in Kentucky, in different, distilleries, and I love, to see the difference that they have within the bourbons,
Right.
and the notes that you get of how they're made also. And I have my favorite bourbons. I love it too. And pairing a bourbon with a good chocolate,
Yeah.
it's the best. So I'm not only saying, tequila. I love to talk about tequila and tell all of you, drink tequila, because I love my country. I love the story. I love the tequileros. In many ways, I have many friends in different distilleries that I adore, that have opened their doors to me for my knowledge, for my growth, for my passion, because they know I come and I speak and I transfer that to everybody, and I invite them and they open the doors of their distilleries. So we all also can go and feel and understand and love and fall in love with tequila.
Yeah, no, anyways, I think that's great. And she's definitely passionate about tequila, because she definitely get a look at her agave earrings that you can't see right now, too. So, so I know we talked about beforehand. So if someone is, one, it's amazing to me how many people are on. I did a party last weekend, and one of the things that blows my mind about where we're at right now. So one, I work part-time at a bar up the street from here called Lazy Tiger, and right now we're in the middle of their Halloween season, and the number one selling cocktail on their Halloween menu is a mezcal cocktail. They've got a whole different range, but the ascent of agave is just wild. Or I worked a private party last weekend, and we went through more tequila than anything. Mm-hmm. So it's so cool to see this. And so part of the answer, MariCarmen, could be that people go to their local bar, talk to a bartender. But if someone is going to their local liquor store because they want to try out tequila a little bit more, do you have any thoughts on how they try to make a decision on what to buy? Is it just doing research? Is it just, I guess I'm just curious, do you have any advice for people as we see the proliferation of the amount of tequila?
Well, that is an question, because there's so many, right now. One thing, I don't want to make any industry mad, but we tequila have surpassed sales on whiskey.
Yeah.
And
Watch the Throne whiskey.
It's
great.
It's great. I love it. And I'm very proud of this. And I cannot stress enough that I want everybody to come visit Mexico and invite everybody to Guadalajara, to come and visit, or Oaxaca for mezcal that you were saying. Mezcal is also denomination of origin. We have also the denomination of origin of mezcal. And the difference that, if you wanted, I can really say it really quickly of, what mezcal is and.
And I think, if very quickly also thinking about it compared to tequila, how do they think about tequila to mezcal? That'd be great. Yeah, so to whatever extent you want to kind of cover.
So very quickly, because we can have another session
Sure.
on mezcal only, because it's really amazing. And I would love to be back with you, Chris.
This is great.
Really quickly, that the basic is the what it's made of, la materia prima. Tequila, again, is only made with blue agave. We have over 200 species of agave in the world. Mexico has, exactly those 200 species. Mexico has the most. So mezcal is made with different types of agave. In reality, they say 34 that they use, but the normal or the majority are 13. And you have espadín, which is the most well, known. We have Madre Cuiche, Mexicano. There's so many. And so it's the mezcal is made with different types of agave, okay? And the other main reason is the way it's cooked. So mezcal is cooked in a oven that it's made a hole in the ground and it's smoked. So the notes that you're going to get in a mezcal are more smoked than in tequila.
Yep.
And now there are regions that are not smoking it that much, but it's the type of agave that makes the difference. And the regions as well. We have the denomination of origin, but there are different regions, different states that belong to the denomination of origin of mezcal. Other states like San Luis Potosí, Puebla, that we add to that denomination of origin.
Right.
And so it's it's very, but mainly that's what it is. A tequila is made with blue agave, and the process and the way it's cooked is different than the mezcal. But we both have the denomination of origin. They're both from Mexico. They're both great spirits, and they both make wonderful selection, to drink. It all depends. Again, I bring you back to your taste. And again, to that question, being in a store, if you like Blanco and you like more pure, flavors, then you go to a Blanco, and you're going to find in a tequila Blanco more citrus, orange, lemon, lime, peppery at the note. I'm saying it generally, okay? Just in general. Just for your audience to see what they like, And so it's a little bit stronger, the flavor of the agave, but it's great, like I said, paired with guacamole, with a ceviche, with peanuts. I always like to do peanuts, plain, just no salt, no flavors, just peanuts. To start a meal, I think the tequila blanco is always something for sure. If there's tequilas that are sweeter than others, and that's just your preference. And you can, start by just knowing the notes a little. We jump to a reposado, and we find, because it's been aged at least 2 years, so we pick up the flavors again from the barrels, and we can find notes that are more oaky, a little bit more buttery, nutty, that we have from the barrel, from the wood that's been used for other spirits. And then we come for an añejo, and you find the chocolate, the dry fruits, the clove, the, you know, and then what it's amazing about all this is that you're also smelling and you're also imagining what it's smelling at as. So you smell and you can smell rubber or leather or, you know, smoke like cigar, or, you know, things that I have been in catas, which is tequila tasting. In Spanish you say cata.
Cata.
We have a cata, we have a tequila tasting, where, you know, we do the difference and we smell one against other, and it's taking you, you know, to, oh my goodness, this smells like a grandma's closet, you know, because, you know, I always say this smells like my grandma's closet. I cannot believe it, you know, because it's just the, you know, the wood, you know, how it used to be like cedar wood, you know, or the, you know, chocolate that, you know, if she had chocolate in the closet, or, you know, whatever, it brings you back memories. And that's what's so wonderful. You know, we have all these senses, you know, and knowing a tequila and appreciating all the características organolépticas.
Yep.
I'm going to say it from a tequila. It's a different world. And, you know, so then the añejo, you know, has more, like I said, you know, the dry fruits, the nuttiness, you know, the, you know, chocolate, and the extrañejo even more pronounced. The agave flavor, it's more pronounced. You know, the chocolate and the caramel and the vainilla, and then it all depends on each brand and how long it's there for, and, you know, it's what it's there. But these are the flavors that you listeners can look for and see what you like. Then you say, well, no, I think I like more not as woody, then go for a reposado. Woodier, then go for an extrañejo. Yeah. Richer, then, you know, an extrañejo. And just a little lighter, but really like a whiskey, if you want to compare it that way, then an añejo. And if you're going to eat like a meat, you know, with a mole, an añejo is incredible. And it blends really well because of the nuttiness and the texture that you can have on a dish. And, you know, it all depends on what you like. And if you try it and you say, no, I'm not crazy about this, then I want to try this other one, you know. It's great.
So real quick, I wanted to go back to when, you know, we got really deep into the preparation of the agave and cooking it and fermenting it. And for a moment, I was thinking a little bit of, for people that might be like steak connoisseurs, for example, you know, how the cattle was raised and pastured, how the cut of meat. You know, when I was thinking about you talking about the jimador in terms of how they're really cutting it down and processing it, you know, all of these things ultimately, you know, whether we're seasoning it or not in advance, all these things are really going to impact, you know, it's the same cow, but these refinements that are made along the way end up really impacting what the flavor is on your plate, the same way that we can think about with this plant here. You know, it's not just we pull it out of the ground and we're done. How we cut it down, how we cook it and process it, all of these things are going to yield different flavors that these master tequileros are bringing to us in our glass.
Yes, absolutely. It's like they're babies. And more there's studies, you know, about the terroir. You know, there's this one brand that I absolutely love that are doing their lots of tequila, you know, in different ranches, you know, and making the difference. This is very limited, you know, and this is from this terroir, from this piece of land. This is from the other one, you know, and they're making a differentiation, even if it's from the highlands, even because they can prove and they can show you, you know, that it's different, you know, flavor from one to another one. And it's been a passion for them. It's a project that they have, they're growing, and, you know, and I love it because it is a project that they have that I see more and more growing, and more, you know, passion to try to really understand, you know, the difference. And we have valles, and, you know, it's very difficult. I can tell you, I don't know if really anyone, I have heard, you know, Grover speaking about, we have done panels about altos and about valles, and connoisseurs, experts, you know, very difficult for them to tell you, oh yeah, this is from Valles, oh yeah, this is from this, oh yeah, it's just a richness on the different brands and knowing what you like. If you like, a brand, Fortaleza, Arete, anyone, Cascawin, Ocho, Dinastía Real or Adictivo, I don't know, it all depends on the profile that I can name you so many,
right.
Brands that I will fall short leaving somebody out there that I absolutely love. We have women that have created their own brands. San Matias. I that's one of my favorite stories and friends, that I have in the industry. So I invite everybody, come with me to tequila. Tell me what you like, and I think that's the best way, and I'm sure that after that you'll know exactly what you like.
So this segues perfectly to kind of the final thing I wanted to talk about, which is, I feel like many of us gringos, we are not strangers to going to places like Puerto Vallarta, Cancun, Playa del Carmen, but I first have heard you speak of the absolute beauty of a place like the state of Jalisco, Guadalajara, tequila.
Yes.
But at the same time, I feel like some people can take a certain comfort in, I'm going to this resort town in Mexico. So if someone, and I know that you said you even might have your own emerging option of way to invite people, but in general, if people are curious and want to kind of go to the source, I've been to a couple Raicilla distilleries.
I love Raicilla too. But it's coming strong too. Yes.
But I would, but I'm also keen to go check out tequila. So if someone's curious about traveling for this, like they would for bourbon or wine, any tips or suggestions on, is it just go? What would you recommend to someone if they would like to get up close and personal with some tequila distilleries?
You can Google, look at the distilleries, you can find where it is, and normally most of the distilleries are open to the public. Most of the distilleries have tours available, great tours, and you come and you do a tour, and they have tastings, they have different packages. Guadalajara has wonderful hotels, wonderful gastronomy. We have Tlaquepaque in Guadalajara, which is incredible for traditional pottery, everything in Tlaquepaque. You see jewelry. It's great. In the whole Jalisco, we have the best gastronomy. So the very traditional tortas ahogadas, carne en su jugo, which is a beef that, they're very traditional. We have the mariachi. The mariachi, that's their ¿cómo se dice? Cuna. Where the nest of the mariachis, Guadalajara. It's where Guadalajara, the mariachi is from. So you hear the mariachis. You have the best, gastronomy. You have, all the distilleries that you can visit. You have the different regions, because we have a Matitan, we have all kinds of regions where this is made, and different towns, Arandas, So you can just Google and then see what you want to do and do it that way. And everybody's always open and, and welcoming, more than anything, welcoming. But if you want to call me, of course, I would like to.
The VIP experience.
If you want the VIP experience, absolutely yes. That's one of the things that I do, and I love to do that because I take them. First, it's difficult because everybody says so many things happening, and crime and, guns and things. And, so I'm not going to guarantee that nothing happens, because things happen in St. Louis, in the school, in the everything, So we are all, sadly, this world is going crazy. So there's no guarantee, but if you know where to go in Mexico, if you know where and times that you can travel, it's safe.
Yep.
It's safe and it's beautiful, and the experience that you have, it's absolutely amazing. If you want to contact me, I have Kiss the Tequila at gmail.com, and I have packages, and we go and we visit the owners of the distilleries, and then you can ask questions directly to the owners of the different brands that I can, take you to. And, it's a beautiful experience. We have the Paisaje Agavero by the UNESCO, which is, the UNESCO heritage site since 2006. And it is an amazing sight view as you drive from Guadalajara, that you land in Guadalajara and you go to Tequila, and you go and you see how the agaves plant, and the sightseeing. I'm sorry that you're not going to believe it. I cry every time I drive it. And every time I'm like so thankful for the opportunity to be able to go back, to connect, to see the agave right there, the way it is, the beauty. You see the blue because it is blue, and you see all the blue agave right there welcoming you into Tequila. And it's just an experience itself to drive there and then to get to Tequila and to smell at 5 a.m. the agave flavor. It's like going into a brewery. All of you have been into a brewery and you go there and you smell all the, things that of how the beer is made, or, bourbon. When you're in Tequila and you smell all the agave, it's like, oof, because then from your nose and the experience of being in this Pueblo Mágico, which is a magic town. Tequila is a magic town. And this is a program that the Secretary of Tourism in Mexico created to do, to promote Mexico. In order for you to be a Pueblo Mágico, you need to comply with different things, and you have to have an amazing experience, and that's why it's called Pueblo Mágico. So I invite everybody to come to Tequila. I'm expanding more on things that they're necessary, and we can have another time. But I invite everybody to definitely come to Tequila, and I'm available if anybody have any questions. You always can email me, kisatequila@gmail.com, MariCarmen Ortiz-Conway. I am a tequila and mezcal expert, and I am happy, Chris, that you had me here and gave me the opportunity to share Mexico with the world. Tequila is a gift from Mexico to the world.
Thank you so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Gracias. Salud, everybody. Salud with the best tequila, the acompañado.
That's
always.
Right. In the company of friends. There we go.
Salud.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. The show notes for today's episode are available at decodingcocktails.com/podcast. If you'd like to keep up with what we're working on, there are two great ways to do so. One, our short weekly newsletter, Cocktail Confidential, which you can sign up for at decodingcocktails.com/newsletter. Or give us a follow on Instagram at Decoding Cocktails. If you think this podcast is great stuff, we'd love it if you'd subscribe or, of course, share an episode with a friend. The Decoding Cocktails Podcast is produced by Chris Bay and myself. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon, and happy cocktailing.